If you're blaming your financial or economic status or position on who's the president, I mean, really, how much say do you have over that? People who build massive amounts of wealth can do it under a liberal president or a conservative president. It doesn't really matter because they find a way to make it work because they're eliminating excuses. It's time for you to go out there and get after it and stop blaming the things that aren't working on other people and start taking it upon yourself. That is what leads to sovereignty. Gentlemen, as of the release of this podcast, it is January 3rd, 2025. So we are 48 hours into the new year. And first things first, you're listening to this podcast, so that's good. Hopefully you have a desire to grow and build yourself as a man, whether you've been here for years and years, or this might even be your very first episode. My job is to give you all of the tools necessary to achieve more in your life. So you're joining us at just the right time. Today, I'm going to talk with you about how a man gains or regains his sovereignty when he lets it go. And sovereignty, guys, is free from the influence of other people. It's free from financial burden and the stress and the weight that comes with owing money to people. It's free of health hardships that are unnecessary because you're overweight, out of shape, not getting sleep, not eating the right foods. It's freedom from ensuring that you're not swayed by what I call the doctrine of popular culture that would have you slip into a pattern of degeneracy, whether that's addiction or pornography or stepping out on your significant other or any other vice that you may have fallen prey to. My job, I consider it, is to help you become the most sovereign version of yourself. In 2016, I wrote a book called Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. And that's what I really want more of us, millions of us, to be thinking about as we continue into 2025. How do we regain our sovereignty in all ways? So I'm going to give you some tips today and some things to consider, and this will help you regain or gain, maybe even for the first time, your sovereignty in your life. So let's talk about it. Number one is have a vision and set goals. If you don't know where you're going, there's no way that you could ever attain anything meaningful or significant in your life. Now, you might actually have victories. You might actually have a few wins, but if you do, it's purely happenstance. It's not something that you can replicate over and over again. It's just something that you stumbled into. And I'm not going to say you got lucky necessarily. Maybe you made a few right choices, but the problem is you can't replicate it. When I was working in my financial planning practice, I got some mentoring and coaching early on. And one of my mentors said, your first appointment, your first potential client appointment should always be very similar. And the reason is because you need to be able to determine what works in those meetings to convert prospects into clients and what doesn't. If you're haphazard and you're random and you're just kind of winging it or shooting from the hip, the ability to define what is helping you win is hard to do, and to define what is holding you back. So the first thing that you need to do, if you have not done this exercise, is to really sit down and just think about what you want for the year. And you can extend this out if you want to look at it over your lifetime or the next 10 years, but ask yourself, what kind of financial position do I need to be in or want to be in? What does my body and my physique look like? How am I feeling physically? What is my connection with God and my spiritual side of my life? And what is the family dynamic? Who am I leading? How am I leading? Really write these things down. I have this journal right here. It's kind of buried in there under a few things, but I have this journal that I write in just about every day. And constantly I'm visualizing and thinking about, what do I want today? What do I want for 2025? And once you start thinking about the vision, and you can do that in a lot of different ways. You can write down, again, your aspirations, or you can write down the type of person you want to be. You know, for example, I show up powerfully for the people I love. I am not stressed in my life because I know I don't have any creditors chasing me down and trying to get me to make payments because I've paid all those things. I'm working diligently and hard. That way I can create financial abundance and prosperity for me and my family. I'm able to enjoy the vacations and trips and experiences and hunts that I want to participate in. When somebody comes to me with a problem, I don't take on their problem as my own, but I help them work through that problem they're having. When I'm tempted to stray from my plan or make bad choices, I'm reminded of this vision and my goals and how those decisions, bad decisions, impact me negatively and also impact negatively the people around me that I love. These are just some ideas that you might incorporate into your vision, but the most important thing is to ensure that it is emotionally charged, that when you get that thing out and you read it, you might even get chills on your arms or feel a little teary-eyed or a little emotional. And that's how powerful it needs to be, because you are going to be tempted with some challenges this year. You might have financial hardship, medical diagnosis, breakups, breakdowns in relationships. I mean, you name it. Any one of those things can happen to any one of us at any single time. So you need to make sure that you're dealing with it before it happens so you know how you're going to handle and conduct yourself. And then once you have that vision, now you can start backing into what your objectives are. Some people call them goals. I call them objectives. Your objectives are exactly what you're going to do or accomplish in order to realize that vision. I just talked with one of our guys inside of the Iron Council, and he has this vision over the next 5 to 10 years to start homesteading. And that's a little bit of a ways out. So what can we do now to ensure that in 5 years he can realize that vision or that dream he has for himself? Well, it's getting himself in a good financial position, stashing some money aside so he can put a down payment on a nice piece of property, a nice piece of land with a little house on it. It might even be learning how to garden, or looking into homeschooling his children, or looking into how to raise cattle or goats or chickens and other livestock. These are things that he can do now. So his objectives, I typically work in 90-day segments. So I work in quarterly segments for the year, and I focus on some of the key areas that I'll talk with you about today. But I create those objectives for those key areas for 90 days. And it's all driving me towards the vision I have for myself down the road. But 90 days, I've noticed, is a short enough time frame to keep me engaged in it. If it goes out much longer than that, it's more easy to lose interest in it and not maintain that course. So 90 days, but it's also long enough that you can actually begin to see results. So if I said, what do I want to do in the next 2 weeks? I mean, unless I got lucky, there's not a whole lot that I can produce that's meaningful and significant in a 14-day window. I can put myself on the right path, but I can't achieve a whole lot in that 14 days. But in 90 days, you better believe I can achieve quite a lot. And then what I do at the end of the 90 days is I either continue on that course of action, if it's working and driving me towards my vision, or if it's not, I do what I call an after action review. And then that will allow me to pivot and change and make adjustments to my objectives in order to either get me back on path or to find a different path that will be more effective. So that's a quick overview, but you have to have a vision and you have to have objectives. Again, your vision is long-term, either or a list of things that you want to have or be over the next 12 months, 5 years, 10 years, or how you personally want to show up, the characteristics that you want to exhibit and portray in your life. And then you back up into your quarterly objectives. So that's number one. All right. Number two, guys, train hard, eat clean, and sleep well. I did a fitness challenge with our guys inside the Iron Council over the past, it's about 6 months, 7 months or so. And some guys did very well, and some guys did not do as well as I thought they would have done. But the guys that did well did these three things. They trained hard, they ate clean, and they slept well. If you can get those three things right, you don't need to worry about what supplement you should use and what biohacking mechanism is going to be best for your situation and doing ice baths and sauna and all that stuff. And I'm not saying, by the way, that any of that is bad, but that's ancillary to the three things I just shared with you, which is, again, train hard, eat clean, and sleep well. That is the key to fitness. There's no HCG diets, if you remember that when that was happening. What's the other one now? Semaglutide, I think is how it's pronounced, where it's a shot and it just makes you nauseous anytime you eat. Like, that's not the way to, that's not healthy. You might lose weight, but you're not actually being healthy. I want you to be healthy as men. And again, this ties back into our sovereignty. If we're healthy, the odds of us having to visit our doctors, the odds of us getting diagnosed with some sort of heart condition or being obese or running into diabetes is significantly reduced. And those medical causes or medical problems are at the top, always the top of the list when it comes to premature death. Heart problems typically, which is a direct reflection in many cases of being overweight and obese. So if you train hard, okay, you eat clean and you sleep well, that's going to eliminate 90% of your problems. What does training hard look like? I don't know what it looks like for you. For me, I do strength training. And strength training has proven over time to be the best way to not only build muscle, but to reduce your body fat percentage. It's the way your metabolism works. It's the way you're working when you're actually lifting. Excuse me. It's the way your body metabolizes after the fact. And that is, in my experience, the best way to get healthy, to lift heavy weights. And I do that 6 days a week. You might do it 4 days a week. A lot of trainers that I've talked with say anywhere from 3 to 5 days per week. I do 6 days per week because it's not only about my health, my physical health, it's about my mindset and mentality. In fact, when I'm done with this podcast, I'm going to go get a workout in. Eating clean, we all know what that looks like. Get rid of the processed sugars, get rid of the processed food. For me, it's eating high protein. I try to eat, I don't always hit this, but I try to eat 1 gram of protein per ideal body weight on a daily basis. So for me, that's about 180 to 100, I'd say 185 to 195 grams of protein per day. That is my ideal body weight. I've got about 7 pounds to go before I get there, but that is my ideal body weight. So that's what I do for protein, and protein is first for me. Like that is the first thing. From there, I get vegetables, a lot of different vegetables. Last night, my girlfriend and I went to a nice restaurant in just outside of Zion National Park, and it was a little steakhouse, and I had the seared ahi tuna, shrimp, mixed vegetables, and sauteed mushrooms. And that's all I had. And it was filling, and it was delicious, and it was healthy-ish. When you go to a restaurant, you know, they put sauces and things like that aren't necessarily healthy, but healthy-ish. And then every once in a while, I'll mix in rice. I try the sweet potato thing. I don't really like sweet potatoes all that much, but they are growing on me. But it might be a potato here or there, but definitely rice mixed in as well. And then I try to drink a lot of water. I do drink Diet Coke, and I also do enjoy a Red Bull on a daily basis. So I guess there's my process stuff, but it's 90%, 85, 90% dialed in. It's pretty simple. It's not real complicated. People say, oh, it's expensive or it's hard or this or that. It's not. You just need to make a decision to do it. And once you make that decision, it just takes consistency until you build reps. And one thing you'll notice, at least I do, is when I eat clean, let's say I have a clean lunch, like I just shared with you, my afternoon, my work afternoon, and even my afternoon with my kids goes so much better than if I go to Burger King and I get a double bacon cheeseburger of some sorts with a large fry and a Diet Coke. Like, don't get me wrong, that's really good, but I don't feel great after that. But I eat it anyways because it's all about that really quick fix of, oh, this is delicious, and that taste rather than how is it actually making you feel. So document that and see how you feel when you eat certain foods. And then sleeping well. Most people will recommend 7 to 8 hours. I'm about 7 hours. If I can get 7 hours, I feel energetic. I feel alive. I wake up on time. My alarm usually doesn't even go off because I wake up a few minutes before my alarm even goes off, which is around 5:30. And I'm up ready to get after it because I've slept well. And there's a lot of other podcasts on how to sleep well, but you sleep in a dark environment, shut down the electronics before bed, keep the thermostat around 68 degrees, and find a mattress that's suitable for you. That's about it. This is not hard stuff. People like to make it complicated because then they can sell you their programs and their wares and their expertise and their books. You don't need that. If you do what I just told you, you're going to be 95% locked in on your physical health. And the rest, you can start supplementing and biohacking if you enjoy that sort of thing. But a lot of you just won't need it if you do that. All right. Number 3, eliminate the excuses. Guys, this is a big one. I talk with so many men every single week, every single day about what's working well, what isn't working well. And a common theme that I hear among many men who aren't achieving what they want to achieve is that it's somebody else's fault or problem. My marriage isn't going well because my wife, fill in the blank. My business isn't good because my boss is blank. My financial situation isn't great because the president or the economy is blank. It's always somebody else. But you know who I don't hear excuses from? The guys who are actually succeeding. The guys who are out there tearing it up, they're achieving their dreams, they're reaching their vision, they're hitting their objectives, they've got their nutrition and their sleep and their training schedule dialed in. Those guys don't complain. And you might wonder, are they not complaining because everything's good in their life, or is everything good in their life because they're not complaining? I would argue it's the latter. That even when things are bad, those people still don't complain. They dust themselves off. They pick themselves up, like it says in the Order of Man intro for the podcast, and they go right back at it and they fix the problem. Now, that's not to say that we need to turn a blind eye to people who might take advantage or manipulate us or hurt us in some way, but you got to get rid of those excuses. Anytime you find yourself justifying performance, justifying the way that you feel about yourself, saying like, oh, well, I was tired, or I deserve this, or I deserve that, or everybody this, and woe is me. Those are all justifications for underperformance. And that's a good indicator that you're starting to make a lot of excuses. The problem with excuses is it doesn't lead to sovereignty. It actually leads to reliance on other people. See, if I make an excuse that my relationship is poor because my girlfriend is blank, then I have to just sit back and wait and hope that she changes in order for this relationship to work. That's not a great way to go about relationships. If, on the other hand, I say, well, here's some things that I'm deficient at, here's some things that I can work on, here's some ways that I can improve, then lo and behold, the relationship tends to get better. Not in all cases, but in most cases, that's true. If you're blaming your financial or economic status or position on who's the president, I mean, really, how much say do you have over that? You get one vote every 4 years. And at the state level, you get a few more, but I'm just talking about, in a presidential election. So you get very few votes to determine who is going to be your elected representative. So how much control do you really have over that? On the other hand, those people who build massive amounts of wealth can do it under a liberal president or a conservative president. It doesn't really matter because they find a way to make it work because they're eliminating excuses. And again, leading back to sovereignty, they're not relying on who the president is. Imagine that. Imagine saying, well, in the next 4 years, I'm not going to be able to do anything. What a waste of time. That's like, 5% of your, well, it's probably less than that, 2.5% of your life? Just waiting for a new president? Or waiting for your boss to change his mind, a 55, 60-year-old man, and you think he's going to change all of a sudden because you're not satisfied in your career? It's time for you to go out there and get after it and stop blaming the things that aren't working on other people and start taking it upon yourself. That is what leads to sovereignty. Next, number 4, tapping into the spiritual realm. I have found, and I've interviewed, over 550 highly successful men and women at this point, that those individuals who succeed have a longer term vision for their lives and what their purpose on this earth is than those who are not successful. Generally, I find that to be true. And I'm not saying all of them are believers, by the way, but they see themselves in a very long-term perspective, and in many cases, an eternal perspective. So the power of that is that they might lose a battle because they make a good choice and decide to do something right. Maybe they don't make as much money. Maybe they get thrown under the bus. Maybe they lose a relationship. There's a lot of things that could happen in the micro if you make those right choices. But in the macro, over the long haul, those people tend to do better. And I think that's why it's so important to have this spiritual component of your life. And not only that, it represents a unwavering litmus test against how you can measure your life. You know, for example, I'm a Christian, so I believe in Christ. And so if I follow what he is doing and I follow his example and I follow his gospel, then I will be able to make choices that are more aligned with something that is going to be absolutely, unequivocally good for me and good for the people around me. But if I don't have that eternal perspective and I don't have that spiritual guidance, really, I mean, it doesn't matter what I do. I get to create my own moral compass. And I don't think that's always the best way to go because we're compromised as human beings. I talk about the natural man sometimes. We're lazy, we're immediate gratification, we want the results without the efforts, we'll lie, we'll steal, we'll cheat, we'll do whatever we can to get out ahead and get ours, even at the expense of other people. It's only a righteous moral code that keeps us doing the right things. And that's why it's so important to tap into that spiritual realm. And not to mention, life is hard. So if you can pray with God or open your scriptures and find some problems to or solutions to your problems, that seems pretty worth it to me. And again, to go back to the sovereignty thing, I'm no longer dictating my actions on what other worldly people would tell me to do. And you can see it. You can see it in culture. It's just degeneracy. And in a lot of ways, it's gross. And it's unrighteous for sure. And I'm not saying I'm above that. I make mistakes all the time, and I have, and I've been vocal about those things when I do make those mistakes. But this gets me back on track faster and allows me not to worry about what so-and-so is saying or what the tide of culture is going towards. It's that eternal perspective, unwavering, does not move. Next, guys, and this is the former financial advisor in me speaking up here, tighten up your finances. You got to tighten up your finances. You cannot allow yourselves to be a slave to the banks or the financial institutions that just want to keep you under their thumb. You have to break free from those shackles. And it's hard if you're strapped with tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. It's hard to do. It's supposed to be hard. It's designed to be hard. Those financial institutions do not want you out of debt. They want you borrowing money at high interest rates and paying them back very slowly over long periods of time. That's what they want. I can't remember who said it, but some people, and I'm butchering this phrase, but something like poor people have interest working against them. Rich people have interest working for them. So you've got to get out of that poor mindset of using interest or borrowing other people's money and paying high levels of interest. So here's the hierarchy in how you manage your finances. Number one is a budget. All right, you have to have a budget. You have to know how much money is coming in and how much money is going out and where exactly it's coming from and where exactly it's leaving. Men have an incredible ability to overestimate our own performance and overestimate how well we're doing even financially. But then when you actually start looking at the numbers, most people have no clue of where their money's going. No clue at all. They don't know how much money is coming in. They think it's more than it actually is. And they have no clue about where the money's going. They think it's less than it's actually going out. So sit down, write out a budget, and adjust it. Sometimes I've seen people who are like, I don't know, because of this and this. And just do what you can right now. And then you can adjust your budget down the road. But the first one is a budget. Second, we start hammering that debt. We got to get rid of that debt. That is crippling you. If you've got $20,000 of debt and you've got $20,000 in savings, I'm not suggesting you do this. I'm just using this as an example. This is not financial advice, as they'd say. If you have $20,000 in debt, $20,000 in savings, the debt is at 8%. The savings is at 0.5%. Well, I can save you 7.5% on your money just by taking the $20,000 of savings and applying it towards the $20,000 of debt. Now, again, I'm not saying to do that because it might not be prudent based on other savings you have in your financial situation, but I'm just using that as an example. Paying off debt is a huge wealth booster for you. And it might not get you ahead, but at least it gets you back to break even. And if you're behind, if you're in the red, we got to get you back to even. And then we can start worrying about getting you into the black. So you have debt, then you have savings, making sure that and we've all heard the conventional wisdom, and I think it's good wisdom, is having 3 months worth of living expenses. So if your living expenses are $4,000 a month, do the math, you should have about $12,000 in savings. That's a good buffer. That way, if one of the kids breaks their arm and you have to hit a deductible on health insurance, or the transmission on your car goes out, or Christmas comes up and you spend a little more than you thought, you've got a good buffer there, and you're not going to be crippled in a moment's notice. You're not going to be homeless just because, you lost your job. You've got 90 days to find a new one because you've got your expenses covered. And then next we get into investing. Stock market investing in real estate, investing in businesses. In fact, I just invested in a business called Black Flag. You guys can check them out. But and I have other businesses that I'm invested in, and I have rental property as well. So find a way to invest, but only when it's appropriate. You should not jump the gun and start investing if you don't know your budget, if you have excess debt and you don't have any money set aside. Do that in the proper order. That will keep you free from that financial and mental burden of just being under financial stress. And then, guys, so that's really what I want to share, but I have a bonus for you. And one thing that I do every single quarter is we open up our brotherhood called the Iron Council. And inside the Iron Council, we have channels that are dedicated to each and every one of these topics that I shared with you today. So having a vision and setting goals, we have the battle planning channel and our battle planners, including an app called the Battle Planner app. We also have, when it comes to training hard, eating clean, and sleeping well, we have our fitness and nutrition channel, where there's hundreds, if not thousands, of guys in there who are talking about what kind of workouts they're doing, what they're doing for meal prep, how they're taking care of their food. In fact, we just did a fitness challenge that wrapped up the end of December, and somebody's going to win $12,500 for winning that fitness challenge. So the return is there for sure if you do it. Eliminating excuses. Obviously, we're talking about that because there's accountability built into what we do in the Iron Council. Tapping into the spiritual realm. There is a spiritual channel where these guys are talking. It's non-denominational, but they're talking about their spiritual health. And then there's the finance and entrepreneurship channel to cover that last one I shared with you. But remember, all of this under the umbrella of building sovereignty. That's what I want for you in 2025. I want you to free yourself. I want you to unshackle yourself from unnecessary burden and hardship and medical conditions and debtors and creditors calling you and hounding you. The mental and emotional struggle of just being underwater, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, financially. I want you to be free from all that. I don't want you to be tossed to and fro based on what the doctrine of popular culture tells you. I want you to have a good, moral, righteous compass and be working towards becoming that kind of man, just like I am personally. Everything that I'm talking with you about, including the Iron Council, I'm part of, I'm involved with, and I'm doing these things. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, when I get these basics right, life seems to go pretty well. It's only when I slip, do the results slip. Let me recap. Number 1, have a vision and set goals. Number 2, train hard, eat clean, sleep well. Number 3, eliminate excuses. Number 4, tap into the spiritual realm. Number 5, tighten up your finances. I hope that helps. If you want that bonus of the Iron Council, we're open until January 7th. So that's 4 or 5 more days. January 7th, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. That's orderofman.com/Iron Council. All right, guys, have a great new year. We've got a lot of work. I've got a lot of exciting things to announce as we roll into the rest of 2025. So stay tuned. We've got events. We've got new guests coming on. So it's going to be an exciting year. I'm looking forward to it. And also thank you for being in this fight to reclaim and restore masculinity with me. Society needs it. I think now more than ever. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.